Hi, guys. Thanks for joining us on the Activate and Illuminate podcast with Mel. I'm your host, Mel. Together, we're going to be diving into some stories of ordinary people doing a little bit of extraordinary things. People who've maybe pushed their bodies, their mindsets, or maybe society's paradigms. So you're going to find yourself maybe wanting to laugh, cry, or even be inspired. We would invite you to share, like, and subscribe, to sign up for our newsletter as well on activateandilluminate.com. Now, just keep in mind that this information that you are going to hear is informational and educational for entertainment purposes only. This does not constitute professional advice of any kind. The views expressed are those of myself and guests only. Listeners are encouraged to seek professional and legal advice regarding their own situations. So, thank you for joining us. We appreciate your time, and thanks again for being here. Hello, everyone. If you are here listening today, I have a treat for you. She goes by Mom, first of all. She is one of the most gorgeous farmers you will ever see. I have Sarah Junck with me today, and we are going to have just an honest, raw conversation about some of the topics that we both hold dear. And I want you to hear what she has been doing for the last few years. So, Sarah, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Well, you have done something a little extraordinary in the last, 4 or 5 years. Tell us a little bit about what you did 4 or 5 years ago and what precipitated that.
Okay, yeah, sure. So my adventures through parenting was not very textbook or what you would expect when you have children and you're going to send them off to school in kindergarten and everything's going to go from A to B and as you plan for. So we had a few kind of hiccups and hurdles through my 3 kiddos years in school. So it was, I guess, my middle son where my adventures into homeschooling or different aspects of learning was exercised. Yeah, so we had some situations with illness and working through Lyme's disease, to be exact. And before it was really known and there was much kind of known about Lyme's disease and how kiddos are going to manage in the education system with that, right? Because they look normal, right? And but they don't exactly function as is needed in the system for school. And so that particular kiddo needed some time away from school. And so that was my entrance into homeschooling. And so we had to create a situation that worked for him and worked along with the school. And so partnered with the school as much as we could and let him be home when he needed to. So we're very used to disruptions in education and working around different needs, mental, physical, emotional kind of needs, because it's all encompassed when you're dealing with Lyme's. So that was my first kind of entrance into homeschooling or learning about different ways that education can look for different needs.
This episode brought to you by protandemcanada.lifevantage.com. What if you could turn on your body to work like it was supposed to? What if you could have it remember how to handle toxins, stress, and the environment like it used to when you were young? What if it worked for your pets too? What if this is not about supplementing something that is missing, but activating something that has gone dormant? About actually turning on your body to make these things again. Learn how to activate your body now. Check us out, protandemcanada.lifevantage.com.
And so then since that, we had a little hiccup in the entire world with with
Just a little hiccup.
with a bit of a pandemic. So we were forced into some homeschooling, and I had 3 different grades, and three different levels of school, right? High school, junior high, and elementary to try to juggle, which was not an easy task. And trying to do it with the teachers and online, and everyone was kind of scrambling and learning. And I am very much not a tech savvy person, as Melanie has learned about me, trying my best. It doesn't come naturally to me. I'm more the milk the cow and, canning and that kind of thing. I'm not good with tech. So learning to do the online education was not a simple task. And then trying to facilitate education for these different grades, different needs. Each kiddo was needing different things at that time, and then trying to kind of balance their emotional, mental needs during that situation as well was really interesting. So yeah, and then from there grew the programs that I created for actually my daughter, because sending her back to school after the pandemic just didn't fit for us. Yeah, and there were many kids like my daughter that it just wasn't right for. And at that time, right? And so I created a program to kind of help all the kiddos after that just kind of recharge and gain back their I don't know, confidence in life, right? It felt like a lot of people really kind of crawled inside themselves and just weren't really ready to kind of trust the world again. And so I found that the kids that came just really excelled because it was more nature-based. We included animals and, forest time and a lot of hands-on creative exploration and things that really engaged all of their senses and reconnected them to nature and to each other and yeah, just opened up a whole new world for them and they did really well.
That is such a great example of just resilience in a tough situation as a mom, of providing resources for your kids. Tell me, I'm curious, how did those kids do in regards to other children that hadn't experienced? Did you notice any differences in their resiliency afterwards and in trusting themselves, as you were talking about?
So you might have to say that again to me. Sorry. So like how they were interacting with other children, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, when you talked about that sense of trust in themselves and trust in the world, did you notice those kids that had been through your programming have a different sense of trust in themselves?
Yeah, definitely. And through the years, I had many of the kids kind of followed through for a couple years, right? And yeah, it was really interesting to kind of watch them grow and gain this confidence. And there were a lot of activities that really connected them to life and nature, and really an understanding and really connecting with the rhythms of nature and the cycles of nature and how we're all animals, and really like kind of simplifying the responses to any situation, environmental or, anything that kind of comes about, right? Like adaptations, and watching the different animals through the cycles and how they adapt and how they shift to kind of deal with many different situations, right? Like when we're looking at birds and molting and daylight hours and different things like that, like they can see how, these things can shift and the animals just adapt. And I really think that helped the kids realize that, like, we're no different than maybe a tree or, anything. We're just going to kind of shift over and move into the light and kind of grow our limbs away from that obstruction, and we'll just carry on.
Well, what a great analogy. So right now in Alberta, we are experiencing another variant of another disruption. And tell me how they've felt about that and how they feel like their tools are for going back.
Yeah, it's interesting. I can say that the kiddos that I'm surrounded by have been kind of happy.
Yeah.
Just like, hey, we have a longer summer break kind of thing, or fall break is early this year or whatnot. And I think that, as I said, like they just have adapted to life not being exactly how it's set out to be, right? Like just realizing that things change, things can kind of be disruptive, and we'll be all right. Right. And so they're
Yeah.
resilient. Children are so incredibly resilient. And I think they're also kind of just, they're not, maybe some children are aware of all of the logistics that are, happening behind the scenes. But I think a lot of them just want to be kids and just see a magical world and just have more time to play. Right? More free time to create an adventure, and then that season will end and then they'll be back to school.
I think that's such a great way to look at it as a parent too, because sometimes I feel like as parents, we get so attached to what's going on with the political part of something or the rules of something or the realities of what we perceive as being something. And you said it best. Kids just want to play.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, that's such a great way to look at it, Sarah.
Sorry, had to
So tell me more about your son with his Lyme disease and just how that impacted him and some of the different challenges that you had to go through in the schooling system to overcome that.
Well, yeah. So I have to be a little bit careful because,
Okay.
there are some aspects of that as, a teenage boy that he may not want to share with the world. However, I do feel it is so incredibly important for any parent that is potentially going through something like that. Like, as I said, the school wasn't really educated in dealing with children with Lyme's disease. And at the beginning, we thought it was a strep infection only. Turns out it was a co-infection with the Lyme, but it was years of battling, trying to figure out what exactly was happening with him. And luckily, we have a wonderful doctor out of Vancouver who sent some blood to Germany, and we were able to get these tests done and figure everything out through with her. But in the beginning stages, we were having to kind of persuade the teachers and principals that like he's not well, right? And he can't cope in this environment at the moment, right? But because he looked totally normal and he had been totally normal, they didn't understand. They didn't believe us. And so literally through meetings where I was in tears, talking to the board and explaining to them that like he's ill, he's not well, and we're trying to figure out he looks well, and they thought that he was just disruptive and just having some different kind of issues. They wanted to test and label and all the things, and it's like, yes, okay, absolutely, those are symptoms that come with this condition for sure. And there was a time where we did have to, go to the psychologists and psychiatrists, and they tried this med and that med to help with the symptoms. But when you're just addressing symptoms and you're not addressing the illness, because we hadn't at that time figured out what all was going on, we weren't really getting anywhere. And unfortunately for my son, it was just kind of picking away at him. So I had to fight, and I removed him from school, not when you were kind of allowed, right? Like you have a certain point in the fall where you can pull them, but after a certain point, the money is, put in place and you're kind of stuck. So they were not happy with that situation. But that is what had to happen. And that was for his best good. And so we did. And we had a lot of fighting to do with the school boards and things like that. But then after, a few years, they came to realize and understand what was sort of happening. And education started coming through about pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorder associated with strep, which is PANDAS is the acronym for that. So that was helpful because the school was starting to become informed about these different illnesses, which really, really helped the situation we were in. And then, kind of at home, we were able to create an environment where he was able to learn without the outside kind of it's just the disruptions or the intensity, kind of the energy intensity in a school is a little much when you're kind of sensitive and dealing with other things, right? It was overstimulating. It wasn't okay for him. And so, yeah, we created an environment where he wasn't feeling that he had to kind of be normal, right? He could just
Yeah.
be. He could just be,
Yeah.
and he could learn, and he could, when he was feeling that he, that was enough, he could go outside, hug a horse, go lay down with a dog, or whatever it was. And we really practiced nature therapy, animal healing, different ways to kind of connect and ground and re-regulate. So lots of sound therapy and different exercises like that, which I have incorporated in the children's programs that I was running. Just, so much learning was done or had happened with that situation, and it really sparked in me that, there are many children that are just don't fit that system, right? And it's just not right for them. And to create an environment where everyone can thrive, and you're engaging all of your senses and learning through nature and wonder and exploration and all of those ways that children do incredible.
And I'm probably a little bit older than you, but when we were in school, I don't remember hearing about nature schools or anything like that. And now I know of quite a few, and just some, other different models of education. What would you say are some of the pros and cons of the public system?
That's a hard question, because I really feel that it is per child, per person, right? My oldest son thrived in that system. He did so well.
Really?
Yeah, he is very academically inclined. He does well with structure. He does great. And he suited that system just fine. He's a quick learner. He's a good student. And, the second kiddo, maybe not given the illness, he still was a little on the ADHD kind of thing, as am I. And,
Yeah.
I think it's just
It's
kind
a
of
gift. It's a gift.
right. Yeah. And I do believe that. And I share that with my kids. And so sitting in a desk for hours is just, it's not suitable for some of us. And so being a person that struggled through school, like myself, struggled through school with ADHD, I could see how, my two just, they weren't thriving. Right. And, it was for my daughter, what I saw after the pandemic and moving back into school was that all of these kids were at different stages, right? And in our lifestyle at home, it's very low tech. We're outside, we're learning different things, right? Where the education looks a little different. And so when she went back to school, she was struggling, and unfortunately, she was taking that to heart, right? Like, some kids got a thick skin and they're really worried what you think. And then others really are. And for her, it was hurting her emotionally. And so I thought, you know what? Like, this isn't worth crushing her spirit. Like, she has such a beautiful spirit. And I call her my feral little sprite, because she can communicate with animals. She is just this adventurous little, beautiful, wonderful, happy little being. And so I'm like, we can learn at any point in our life, right? And often when it comes to something that we really want to learn, or something that we want to move ahead in, we learn it so much better, right? We're passionate about it. We can connect with it, and we're going to learn. And so that was really important to me, to really kind of step back and think, well, can I rebuild her spirit? Well, that's kind of hard, right? But we can learn, we can pick up these academic pieces that may have kind of fallen through the cracks at any point, right? So it was more important to me to keep her spirit whole than to worry about these little kind of aspects of academic pieces that, we'll deal with that, right? We'll get it. So, and yes, maybe the kids aren't quite at, each kind of set score for each subject, or, whatnot like that. And so I guess I don't really worry about those things, right? Like, they're learning, they're using their interests to learn, kind of base a lot of our learning off of the desired outcome that the Alberta government kind of puts out, right? Like they've got like certain criteria that you need to meet. And so we use that as kind of a baseline. And then we take those components and say, okay, well, how can we learn this through something that you're interested in? Something that you could connect with, or, you know, your day-to-day life. You know, can we bring math into cooking? Can we bring math into sewing? Okay, so you need a costume for Halloween. Well, guess what? We can incorporate all of these different aspects into this, right? We did a little bit of geography with our cooking, you know, the kids, we just made it fun, right? We took a Nerf gun and we shot a map, and it's like, okay, so you need to find out some things about their culture. I want you to download some music from there for the dinner, create a recipe or like a menu for our meal. And it was so much fun. Like my son, for one of the meals, he hit Brazil. And he made these little flags for all of the meals and everything. And so played the music and had a dessert from Brazil and like all of these things. And we talked about the culture and, you know, many different things. But it was a fun way to learn, right? And so they really take it in. You know, and they really retain it. And so, whereas there's many things that I had to kind of reteach myself in this homeschooling journey where, yeah, sure, I learned that in school, but it did not stick. It was not retained because I didn't connect it to anything. I didn't want to learn it. And so I just basically, you know, memorized it, threw it down on paper and left it there. Right. And
Yeah.
I find that, you know, when we can really connect it to something that they're passionate about, or that, you know, they can understand why they need to use it in life, they learn it better. They retain it stronger.
You know, everything that you're talking about there, it's taking me on a parenting journey in my head of the times that I was too serious, took things, you know, that I did not have as much fun as I could have had, and maybe as much adventure as I could have had. Right? Like just that example that you said of throwing, I had mentioned something like that a few years ago to my husband, saying like, wouldn't it just be so much fun to just like throw something at a map and just book a trip, right? Like just, okay, like maybe there'll be a few like no-go zones, but
Right.
just like, okay, and then that's where you go. Instead of like, okay, people, you know, our age, if they go somewhere, they, you know, book a all-inclusive in Mexico or something, and it's the same experience. And it is like just to go and have an adventure. We get talked out of adventure so much as adults. And I feel like as adults, we talk children out of adventure. And
Absolutely.
as you were saying your stories, I couldn't help but just feel sad at some of the times that I've talked my kids out of, and I saw maybe the more serious side of the situation, or you got to do this, you got to do your homework, and you got to do it like this, and you got to, you know, like I wasn't really structured in some ways, but I think there's so many things about this schooling paradigm that we buy into that we have to do. And you talking about this concept, it reminds me of the term that I've heard so much about, which is the unschooling part of it. And I feel like if we could just take that concept, never mind school, but throughout life, we would all be in such more of a happy, harmonious state with ourselves.
Well, and you know, that is so true because I often say that the kiddos that come to my programs, sometimes they struggle with immersing themselves into nature because they're worried about being dirty. They're worried about, you know, just so many pieces to it if they're not familiar with it. And so it starts with us as parents. It starts with us, you know, showing them that and modeling that we can have fun. We can be silly. We don't need to worry about what society thinks about us all the time, right? And so, you know, my kids now in their teenage years are like, "Mom, do you have no shame? Like, don't you get embarrassed?" And I'm like, well, not really, because I guess I don't really care what they think. And so I'm just a big child at heart. And it's fun. But, you know, the saddest thing I see is that kind of pressure of society, right? Because children know what they need. And when they're small, they're more so allowed, well, maybe not always, but more so allowed to do what they need to do as natural beings. So they're going to go outside, they're going to kick off their shoes, they're going to put their toes in the dirt, they're going to ground themselves, earth themselves, they're going to pick up stones, they're going to hug a tree, they're going to hug an animal just because they feel they need to, because it fills their soul. And then as time goes on, and we have that pressure from society or social media to be a certain way or whatever, we then kind of, it's like, I really want to just, lay down on the grass or lay in that moss and just like absorb into it. And it's like, well, but I can't because that's weird, right? And it's like, just be weird. Just live it. Just be it.
Yeah. So tell us, you have transitioned a little bit in the last few years, and now with schools back in theoretically and all the rest of it. Tell us what you are doing for adults.
Yeah. So my daughter has decided to go back to school, and that's great. I truly feel that at this point, she has a strong sense of self, and she our communication is really great. So if ever there was something bothering her, she is so quick and so comfortable to just tell me. So I'm really confident in that. So she's chosen that that's where she wants to be right now, and she's enjoying it. So I have a little bit of time where I'm not surrounded by kiddos, which I loved that season too, right? But this is a different season, and I'm working more with adults, and so the parents, right? Just as I said, kind of, it takes that parent to model and show the kids that this is safe, or this is okay, this is helpful, right? Because they look to us. And so I'm facilitating some nature therapy, earthing, grounding, civil therapy classes, and some wellness workshops and retreats, and teaching some farm homesteading courses and workshops and things like that, sustainability kind of things, and just ways to kind of support your own food and wellness.
Well, and I feel like everyone in the world has decided in the last few years, like, that is very important information now. Even though I know that my mom and maybe other people around me too would have wished that I would have canned more and stuff like that. We look back on some of those old skills, and people with them have been in absolute demand.
Yeah. Well, it's helpful on many levels, right? You're
Yeah.
able to kind of control the food that you're bringing in and nourishing your family with. You're able to create an environment for the things that you're growing to be a certain way, if you want it to be organic or holistically farmed or something like that, if that's important to you, if that's important to me. So those are skills that I share with others, at how we can work with nature, not against nature in our farming practices, how we can create really nourishing food, how we can preserve it, teach soap classes and milking workshops and different things like that. So because I was not raised this way, I was raised in town, so I had to learn
Really?
blood, sweat, and tears and a lot of YouTube.
You were not raised this way at all.
No, I was raised in a townhouse with a
Yeah.
single mom and a cat. My mom didn't even drive. I
Okay.
had a fish also for a time, and that
Wow.
was it. Yeah. So I just was determined that this is how I was going to live and how we were going to create a life for our children. A lot of it was pushed on by my child with the Lyme's illness, because we didn't know what was wrong for so long, right? And so it was like, okay, let's break it down, right? Let's provide the most nutrient-rich food, know where it's sourced. And the best way to do that is do it yourself, right? And so I started with gardening, started with, your gateway kind of things, chickens and sourdough, all of these kind of things. And
So chickens are gateways?
yeah,
They're gateway
it
animals?
is. Like sourdough is kind of like the gateway, and then it moves into like chickens and sheep or goats, or you just kind of get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then
Yeah.
then you jump into cows, and like, I am telling you, I had no experience. So when I thought, I was like, I am getting a milk cow. Well, I bought a heifer that wasn't even halter broke, and I had no idea what I was doing. So I had to train her to be milked also. And so my suggestion is buy a milk cow that has been milked before. If that is your first entrance into it, you will save yourself a lot of struggle. I was
If you're
very
going to
naive. I learned to butcher a chicken off of YouTube. I printed pictures. It was, yeah.
Wow.
So now I teach people because it's, yeah, it's a little easier to learn hands-on with somebody.
Wow. So this is what your parents are learning how to like that is amazing.
Yeah.
So many people would love to learn some, I mean,
I
particularly if they live in a rural environment, maybe not if they live in a townhouse, but it's so important to know.
Well, and I actually taught the children that as well. So in my
Okay.
classes, and so that kind of is what sparked the adult lessons, is because I was teaching it for kids. And the adults were like, I want to learn that, do an adult session. So because we had to learn anatomy, right? And
Yeah.
so the best way I could think, the most, hands-on, like way to connect this to that kind of thing was to butcher a chicken. And so we butchered chickens, and it's teaching them these
Wow.
skills. It's teaching them where their food comes from and how it gets from the barnyard to the table. And they did all the way through from collecting eggs to hatching eggs to raising, tending, and processing the birds. And so that appreciation for their food was just so strong, right? And they learned what a heart looks like, and they were able to kind of dissect, and they checked out the tendons. Everyone got a kick out of the fact that, if you pull the tendon, the claw kind of retracts and things like that. And so there's no better way to learn than to actually physically see, and like they just couldn't believe the lung tissue and how it looked and how light it was and all of these things. And, not every child was comfortable with the situation. So parents were notified far in advance. They had the whole, program outlined, so they knew which day was chicken processing day. So if they thought their child would not be comfortable or their kiddo was not comfortable, they didn't bring kiddo that day. Some kids were really interested, but wanted kind of a background seat. They didn't really
Yeah.
want to touch it.
Yeah.
They just wanted to experience the situation and kind of oversee it. And that's fine too, right? And some were like, we're pluckers. That's it. So
What was the parent feedback and response like maybe from the program in general?
they loved it. They loved it. I still
I
get
can
asked, like, are
imagine.
you going to do it again? Will you do more? And the struggle I have is, with my daughter not being home. She was such an incredible hand as well. I struggle with being able to create the programming, facilitate the lesson, and also manage the farm and manage everything that goes through it, right? So yeah, with running the kids sessions, I haven't quite found the people to kind of partner up with to support the program. So it has kind of moved into more adult programming at this point.
Well, good for you for recognizing something that was needed and just working through it to figure out a situation for your kids. I think there's so many people that are probably in varying stages of this journey, sitting at home thinking, "My goodness, I
Yeah.
wish I had that," or "I wish I could create that," or "I wish I knew of that." Yeah.
Anybody can, right?
Right? Yeah.
I wasn't raised in this, and
Yeah.
and also, like, yes, we have the land and the animals here with us, but going on a walk, finding a forest, we did so much just even in our forest space, not even just with the animals, but we did math lessons on, tree growth, trying to age a tree and using math systems to kind of figure that out, and it was a lot of fun. Yeah, there's just so many ways to learn and to connect learning to real life.
What would you say was your biggest learning out of it?
I got so much enjoyment out of it, and it brought me to a place where I was spending more time outside and more time creating and connecting and seeing from a child's perspective, that the magic that is everywhere, right? And just appreciating everything. That I just loved it so much. Yeah, I do intend to do it again.
Well, you I know you a little bit, Sarah, and I know that you have like this isn't just one gig that you're doing. You've got a million gigs that you've got going on. Tell us what you do in the schools.
Oh, yeah. So it's been about 12 years. I've run the hatching programs in the schools. The other school programs I run are like I run a vermicompost program. So it's using worms to create compost with their lunch waste and things like that. And then I have the kids come out for farm tours as well. So the hatching program is very fun. So I go in once a week, I bring the incubator and eggs, and I come in weekly. We talk about the development with the embryo or the chick that's forming, and we I bring in a hen and a rooster so that they can kind of meet them and learn about them. And we do activities and a fun game at the end. It's very what is the word I'm looking for? So like interactive, and there's a lot of learning. There's charts and they kind of keep track of things and stuff like that. So
What ages?
Typically grade 1 and then sometimes grade 3.
Okay. All right. What's another hat that you wear?
I'm a hairstylist.
On top of it all, guys.
Yeah, that's my real job, kind of. And yeah, so I farm and run the school programs and do hair, and I'm a mom. That's my most important job. And I work with an equine practitioner. She does MagnaWave and a lot of kind of therapies for horses. So I'm the horse handler. So I hold the horses as she's working on them, doing the chiro and stuff like that. So yeah, that's the thing about a little bit ADHD is you're just kind of a little bit of all of it, and I love it.
A little bit. I'm starting to think of ADHD as when people say that they have ADHD. Everybody I know that has ADHD, yeah, they have trouble maybe focusing on some things, but I have never seen anybody more productive, they may get distracted, but they do more. It's like a superpower. Tell me I'm wrong.
Nope. I 100%, it feels like a superpower because, it's like painting with a whole bunch of different colors, right? So yeah, it can be challenging to focus and kind of hone in and, stay strong in one thing or spread yourself evenly and not just only hyper focus on one thing. But yeah, it's an interesting journey. I do know that through my herbalism, so I also am an herbalist. I definitely use some herbs to kind of settle and focus and kind of
Which ones do
calm.
you use?
So for myself, it all depends on what I'm feeling that I need, right? And so I'll use different supplements and herbs and things for different aspects. So if I'm trying to really learn something or focus, I'll use a lot of rosemary and things like that. If it's like kind of anxiety, I'm feeling overwhelmed, and then, like I'll turn to like skullcap or maybe some passion flower or different things like that. Like it all depends, right? Like because sometimes I bite off, a little more than maybe I should chew.
Than is humanly possible?
Yeah. And so it's like, I definitely lion's mane mushroom, keep that memory sharp and stuff like that. And so, yeah. Yeah.
Well, if there was a parent out there right now, with a kid struggling in school that might not have all of these options available, but what would you tell them?
Just go into nature. I really truly feel that nature has so much to offer and that society has become so disconnected from it. I believe that is our power source, is connecting with the earth and just learning from it, watching, observing, kind of following those rhythms, those seasons, understanding circadian rhythm. And we're just animals, like we need to really kind of let ourselves be part of nature. We are nature. We're not separate from it. And I think that is a lot of the reasons that people are suffering and struggling, is that we just need to kind of get back into that seasonal rhythm, get back into the rhythms of nature, connect with nature, observe and learn from nature, and just be one with nature again.
Well, I cannot think of any better spot to leave this podcast, Sarah. That is absolutely profound. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us?
I can't think of what else I may have left out. I feel like I rambled on, and I'm sorry
No.
if I just took it way too in depth in any angle.
Not at all. Thank you so much for being here. And honestly, you are such a breath of fresh air. And thank you for all that you do. All right.